Welcome to everyone to the 32-team NFL franchise of the 2007-2008 NFL season. Here is the Pittsburgh Steelers Recap. They were 7-9 and fourth in the AFC North. Yes, this is pretty uncommon for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there were some complications throughout the season. The main one was the injuries due to Ben Roethlisberger. He was injured early in the season and then re-injured for the rest of the season. As you can see there, Ben Roethlisberger had about 1,400 yards, 12 TDs, 6 interceptions, 11 sacks. They signed Aaron Brooks of the New Orleans Saints to then carry the workload because Charlie Batch was not going to give them much playoff hopes. As you can see, he did very well on the ground with his leg, about 209 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. And he did have one more passing TD than Ben Roethlisberger. However, he played significantly more games. So there you are, Roethlisberger with 12 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in fewer games, whereas Brooks was 13-6 with more games. Now there was actually Charlie Batch throwing that one touchdown. But most of it, as you can see, number 2 there, doing the best he can to keep Pittsburgh's playoff hopes alive. And they actually were alive. It's just they were not able to compete with much of the other teams without Roethlisberger. Then you have Santonio Holmes, number 10 there, beating the Browns defender, Eric Wright, with 740 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. Holmes was a fun player to play with. I remember back in Madden 08, because he was young, he was quick, and he was a great deep threat for Pittsburgh in this season. As you can see, the highlights with Roethlisberger, a lot of good happened. There were some explosive plays when Big Ben was in. And Brooks was a very serviceable backup. During the offseason, Pittsburgh was trying to re-sign him, but he wanted so much money. He was like an 82 overall. And Pittsburgh ended up just drafting Dennis Dixon as they did in real life. And I figured Dennis Dixon was very similar to Aaron Brooks, a cheaper and younger version. There's Hines Ward, again, the veteran. Only 604 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns, but still a very strong receiver for Pittsburgh. Much more of a possession receiver there, but there you see him breaking tackles, avoiding defenders. That game there with the Patriots was a huge game. The Pittsburgh Steelers did win that game against the Patriots, and it was a very high-scoring back and forth between Aaron Brooks and Tom Brady. But it was one of the few games the Patriots did, in fact, lose. There's Ward getting a great touchdown against the Bengals. Cedric Wilson was a decent receiver that was like 3rd, 4th string. Heath Miller, the tight end, again, 625 receiving yards. The big guy in the corner. Very, very easy to get some easy touchdowns with that play. There's Roethlisberger in the back of the end zone, throwing a nice 43-yard pass. Aaron Brooks was on the run quite a bit. When they were looking in the draft, they wanted to improve their offensive line. Now, as we finish this last replay here of the tight end, their running backs with Willie Parker was very impressive. He ran for 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns. He was injured for a few games, which allowed Davenport to have a little bit more of a role. However, Parker was a very explosive running back. He was one of the top 5 running backs in the league frequently because he had many explosive runs. He also started out in the game against Cleveland. And, of course, he had like 150 or 180 yards rushing against them in the first game they played. There, I believe that's Kevin Barlow. And then I think that's Davenport running it in. Yep, number 44. Now, their Pittsburgh defense, although they didn't rank too great, they still had some great plays. Right there, knocking the ball out for the interception. Here, they forced the fumble against the Raiders, pick it up, and they walk right into the end zone. That was James Harrison with the touchdown. This was a bad throw by Brady that got right into Polamalu's arms. And just look at that run back. He breaks off 2 tackles and runs it right into the end zone. Very Pittsburgh-like. There you have it. There's the total offenses. They were 18th ranked, so they're right in the middle of the pack. They were lower with total passing yards at 25. Their rushing attack was 11th, so they were 11th in total rushing yards. Total points, they were also ranked 11th. And then least yards allowed, they were 30th. So their defense did not come through for them either. And then with passing, they were 29th. Not the Steeler defense we're used to. Again, 28th in rushing yards allowed. But again, they did have their explosive moments on defense. And you can see 29th in least points allowed. Pittsburgh plans to bounce back after this season. They went 7-9. They hold the 10th pick in the 2008 NFL Draft.